What's going on, everyone? This is Zach back here with another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. And here in today's episode, we are playing a game of this or that. So we're going to look at some of the rising stars in the NFL, and we're going to pick between them which one we would rather have. We did this back in the summer, and we're back doing it again after the season. So I hope you guys enjoy that. And now let me introduce you to the rest of the crew. Whoa, wrong slide. There we go.
All right, what's going on, guys? Eric, your ranting co-host here. If anybody knows me, you know I live in Texas. I've been dealing a lot with this crazy weather. I'm so glad it's over. I can go outside again. I can shower again. I'm just so happy about that. So, no rants right now. Just excited to do this or that and ready to get into the episode.
What's going on, guys? It's Connor, the co-host with the most, and I haven't been dealing with a lot of snow, but I've been dealing with a lot of rain. North Carolina has been very wet so far this winter, and I wish it was snow, but had to settle for rain. But I'm excited to do this. Looking forward to Zach and I probably disagreeing on everything, so guess we'll see how that goes.
What's up, guys? It's Nate here. I had a week off last week to talk about some basketball, and I'm obviously not a big basketball guy, so I had the week off, but I'm excited to be back and talk about some football and already start looking ahead to next year. I think it'll be a pretty fun episode.
Yeah, it should be. And we're doing this live as well, so we all know what we're going to pick, but we don't know what the other persons are going to pick. So that's always the most fun, is when you don't know what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and get things
Zach and I about to disagree on just about everything.
Probably, guys. Let's keep a counter on how many times we disagree. But basically, our plan for this is we're going to focus on offense only for this episode. Later on, we might come out with a defense episode, but we just want to kind of keep things more consistent than we did last time. I remember we had a discussion about pancakes and waffles as well. So
waffles, you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
And also coffee or tea and Team Coke.
Yeah, go back to that episode. I went back and listened to it. It's got a lot of classic moments on there for sure. But we're going to stick with just offense, and we're going to even break it down even further. So we've got quarterbacks, receivers, running backs that we're going to compare. So we'll go ahead and start with the first one. And basically, we have two rookies here, or former rookies now. They're going to go into their second year, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. So these are the two best rookie quarterbacks last year. Herbert won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Burrow was having a great season until he got hurt. So basically, the theme of this game is, if you're starting a franchise like from scratch, which one would you take? And I'll start first, and we'll go to Eric, Connor, and Nate. But for me, I'm going to pick Team Burrow.
Team Burrow.
Team Burrow.
Team Herbert.
Okay, so Connor and I actually didn't disagree. So
woo! Across the call, high five.
Yeah. But I am surprised it was 3-1 Burrow. I thought there'd be more Herbert votes out of this group. The reason that I picked Burrow is, I think, given the situations, I think he had less to work with this season, and that he played in a much tougher division as well in the AFC North. But you can say both these guys are great, but I would still rather have Burrow. I think he's a bit more accurate. I think Herbert is pretty good going deep and all, but I just really like Joe Burrow. Like I'm so high on Joe Burrow. I think he's gonna potentially win one, maybe two Super Bowls in his career. So I'm a big fan, and I don't knock too much points off for the injury. I think had he not gotten hurt, I think he would have kept up his pace. He threw some interceptions, but also with Herbert too, towards the end of the year, he kind of stagnated a little bit. He was having the best part of his season in the mid middle of the season, and then he started to, play like a rookie for the last couple weeks. They had a lot of close losses, I know, but overall, I'm leaning Burrow slightly on this. Does Eric or Connor, do you guys want to add anything to that? Really, for me, there's no definitive way to argue other than this. This is just my gut feeling on this. I just think Burrow's going to end up being better.
I mean, my main reason would probably be the fact that, like you said, Burrow had less to work with, and also that he would have been the rookie of the year had it not been for him getting hurt. Like, Herbert definitely was, like, in a way, he kind of got handed that award by Burrow getting hurt. Like, he was playing good and all, but there was no way he was going to win it unless Burrow got hurt. And lo and behold, Burrow got hurt. So, I mean, even towards the end of the season, like, when Herbert started to stagnate, there was even some talks like, oh, maybe Justin Jefferson might be in the conversation now. Like, I don't think, whereas like when Burrow was still playing, there was always like, okay, no question, like Burrow's the rookie of the year right now, except for maybe like week 2 or 3 when Herbert like had a really good start. But yeah, I mean, I hope he doesn't win 1 or 2 Super Bowls, especially playing for the Bengals. Maybe if he goes somewhere else, I'll let him win those Super Bowls, but not while he's with Cincinnati, not allowed.
So Nate, you were the only one on Team Herbert's side. So go ahead and say why you picked him instead of Burrow.
Yes, I mean, I'm a fan of both of these guys. I think they're both going to be, some of the top 5-10 quarterbacks, a few years from now. But I really like Herbert if I had to start a team from scratch, just because of, I think just really the talent level, like I think his ceiling is going to be higher. He did, like you said, play like a rookie, and that showed at times down the stretch of the season. But I think if they give him a chance to, come in and mature a little bit more, work on some of those things, and get a little bit more. Not that they had bad talent per se, but add maybe one more piece, shore up the offensive line a little bit, and he could be, really special with that, huge arm, and he can move, he can run a lot, which is kind of like deceptive for a bigger guy like he is. I could see him being a lot like Josh Allen, where a couple years down the road he could really be something special with the tools he has. Whereas Burrow, I think I think he was great off the bat. I think he's gonna be really good for the Bengals going forward. But I just feel like, the ceilings are, I think Herbert has more room to grow from what we saw this year. Whereas Burrow, I think he'll get better with better talent around him. But I think what he has as a passer, I think we kind of know what he can do there. So I'm giving the slight edge to Herbert, but I think I really like the future for both of these guys.
Yeah, definitely. I tried to make these as tough as possible. Some of them are easier than others, but this one I know is going to be tough for all of us. Moving on now to our second quarterback duel. We have 2 different quarterbacks here. Matthew Stafford, formerly of the Lions, now was traded to the Rams, and Dak Prescott was with the Cowboys last year. We'll see what happens next year. I think he goes back, but Stafford or Dak, a lot of the times people have these 2 guys at the tail end of their top 10 quarterback lists or in the teens on their rankings. So I've seen lists with Stafford ahead and Dak ahead. But let's go ahead and make our picks, guys. I'm going to be Team Stafford.
Team Prescott.
Let's say I figured Eric would have to do that, otherwise he's going to end up sleeping on the couch tonight. But Team Stafford.
Team Stafford.
Wow. Okay. So we have a 3-1, and Connor and I still haven't disagreed yet. We'll see how long that keeps going. So I want to let Eric defend his Team Prescott pick and why you would rather have Prescott than Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, if I was going off of their current situations, my pick would have been Stafford, because I think he's in a great situation with LA now. But if I'm starting my own franchise and I get to pick one of these 2 to be my starting quarterback, I'm picking Dak Prescott for multiple reasons. The biggest reason is just simply being because he's a lot younger than Stafford. So that's the biggest edge, in my opinion. If you're starting a franchise, you want to have somebody that can probably last you a long time. And I know he had that brutal injury and everything, but he's supposed to make a full recovery from what I understand. So just with him being a lot younger and still having, a little more room to grow, I would rather have him for that reason. And also, too, I just haven't seen Matthew Stafford really get much done in his career. I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in the sense that he's been on a bad team throughout most of his career. But there have been some times where the Lions had a lot of good weapons around him and they only made it to the playoffs like one time. That concerns me a little bit. Whereas while Dak's still pretty young, they've at least made the playoffs on multiple times. I mean, he hasn't like won a Super Bowl or anything yet either. But I feel like Dak is just a little bit better overall than Stafford. And like I said, mainly with the young age factor, he's going to last on my team a lot longer. So that's why I'm picking Dak.
All right. So, Connor, talk to me about why you picked Stafford instead.
So, I think the thing for Stafford for me is that, he's always been that gem on a bad team. I mean, we always talk about Deshaun Watson as being like a gem on a bad team right now, but Matthew Stafford really has been that for his whole career. Because, I mean, I know Eric mentions that he had some weapons with him, some of those years with Detroit. But the one thing that Detroit has pretty much never had the whole time he's been there is a run game. Like Detroit has never, I mean, they had Reggie Bush for a couple of years, and he's not meant to be an every down back. They got Kerryon Johnson, and that they thought he was going to be something special, but then he ended up just being really injury prone. And now they've got, they're trying to develop DeAndre Swift, and Adrian Peterson's long past his prime. Like, he's not going to be an every down back. So it's just they've always had good receiving talent, with, Calvin Johnson. And now they've got Kenny Golladay, who's also pretty injury prone. But, there was some in between years where, he was throwing to like Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. Like, he didn't have a number one receiver to throw to. Both of those guys are definitely number two receivers. They're not primary receivers. And I feel like Detroit's always had a bad defense too. I mean, they've had a couple of years where they've been able to put it together, but for the most part, Detroit has just been a dumpster fire. So, and yet Stafford would still go out and throw for like 4,000 yards. I mean, he even broke the 5,000 yard mark one season. He's on that short list of quarterbacks, which Drew Brees is on like 5 times, of quarterbacks who have thrown for over 5,000 yards. So I think he's, obviously Dak, like you said, is younger, and I know you said something like, that Dak still has room to grow. I honestly don't think Dak's going to grow anymore. I mean, this is going to be like his 6th season now that we're going into. So he's pretty much, I think he's hit the point now where it's like he's not going to develop any more than he already has. And like I know I've mentioned this on a previous episode before that a lot of the stats that he put up this year were in garbage time, and that they're quite a bit overinflated. When people look at them, they go like, "Oh, like Dak Prescott had 420 yards and like 5 touchdowns," and it's like, well, 203 of those touchdowns came when the other team was playing prevent defense, which, I mean, I could probably throw against prevent defense. It's the worst defense ever invented. So it's just, I don't know. I think I trust the experience and the veteran leadership that Stafford has. He's been doing it for a lot longer. I said, and with both of these guys, you know what you're going to get. And with Stafford, in my opinion, he's just a little bit better when it comes to that facade.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add in a few points here to add on to the Stafford side. I think because he's in Detroit, he gets overlooked, but also, too, another factor for me in this pick is they're both tough, but man, Stafford is so tough. Like, the hits that he gets because his offensive line sucks. That's another benefit that Prescott's had, a great offensive line most of his career, but Stafford's has been just shoddy at best. And the kind of hits he takes, he truly leaves it all on the field. And with the way that the game is now, he's going to play for probably another 10 years. So while he is older, I still think he's in the prime of his career because quarterbacks last a lot longer with these new NFL rules. So I feel like he can last another 10 years and have far more success than Dak will, because just because you're younger doesn't mean you're better. And I think Dak could potentially end up being like a Carson Wentz. We'll we'll see. Anyways, we'll move on now to the next set here, the final group of quarterbacks. So we've got team Kyler Murray and team Josh Allen. So I'll go ahead and start this. I will pick team Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Okay, so as I figured, we would probably all pick Josh Allen on this, but I'll give a devil's advocate for Murray. But Nate, start us off with why you picked Allen, and what benefits does he have that Murray doesn't?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really just, I think, Josh Allen really impressed me this year. I think the strides he's taken to become better, like all around passer. Obviously, we knew the arm strength was there, the mobility's always been there, but he really looked like a real, franchise quarterback this season. And I think that for me, Kyler Murray just hasn't really hit that point yet where he puts up great numbers, both passing and rushing. But it's just, if you look at the teams he's played on in Arizona, there's not a whole lot else on offense besides him and DeAndre Hopkins doing the whole thing. So I feel like, he is great on paper, but if I had to pick someone to, again, like run my imaginary franchise, I would take Allen in a heartbeat just because, the all around, I think he has, more talent, bigger arm, and he finally has the, the mental decision-making part. It seems like he has that down better, so I would have to give him the edge here. I think Murray's still going to have a great upside, but it's just, I don't know, I'd like to see him with, more talent around him and see what he can actually do as a real quarterback.
All right, do any of you guys want to add anything to Allen before I give my devil's advocate?
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I think Nate said it all pretty much.
All right, so like I said, I would pick Allen, but my devil's advocate for this is I do think Murray. So I think we know what Murray is, but with Allen, for me, my devil's advocate would be we've only seen one really good year. He had a decent year the other time they made the playoffs, but last year was his big breakout year. And Murray's only had 2 seasons. But the thing when I watch Allen that frustrates me the most is sometimes his decision making with taking sacks or throwing interceptions and stuff. It's just you never know if that stuff could come back. It's unlikely, I think, but that is keeping me. I really want to see another full season like last year before I'm really 100% sold. And with Murray, I think I'm more sold on how he's going to be. He's not going to be as good in the long term as Allen will be if they continue on the path that they are. But I do think he can be solid enough to win a Super Bowl with, even if the right pieces are in place. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Kyler Murray is obviously not a bad choice or anything. It's not like, it's not like, I picked Josh Allen because he sucks or something. Like, Murray definitely has the potential to get it done. And you saw, it's kind of interesting that these were the 2 choices because you saw Kyler Murray take a big step when he got DeAndre Hopkins this year, and you saw Josh Allen take a big step when he got Stephon Diggs. So definitely shows how important it is to have proper weapons around you. But I do like Josh Allen better, though. I like his size and frame better. I like his athletic ability. Like, Murray just kind of worries me a little more with his size, but obviously it's not like it's a bad pick or anything.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on and look. I did post all of these questions to Twitter, so if you follow us on Twitter at Clutch Crew Sport, you would have seen these, and you can follow us there for more tweets and content. So for the Burrow and Herbert tweet, we had 101 votes, which is pretty good, and Herbert actually got 67% of the vote. So they disagreed with us, and then the one with Matthew Stafford or Dak Prescott got 78% of the vote. Stafford got 22%, and then, which also disagreed with us, by the way. And then Kyler Murray or Josh Allen. Allen got overwhelming 97% compared to 3% from Kyler Murray. This had 278 votes. thanks mainly the Bills Mafia found it and tweeted it, and then everybody voted on it. So I think that was skewed, but also I think that was what the majority would say as well. So those were how the tweets went. And now let's transition and go on to wide receiver section of this or that. So for this one, these aren't two wide receivers, but I thought it was interesting because they play on the same team. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, two dynamic pass catchers. So who would you guys rather go with? Personally, I'm going to pick Team Kelce.
Team Kelce.
Team Kelce.
Team Kelce.
Okay, so we all four agreed on this one. I guess I'll let Connor start as why Team Kelce.
Yeah, I definitely would go with Travis Kelce just because I feel like he's way more, I don't know, like he's got a lot more to his game than Tyreek Hill does. I think Tyreek Hill, yeah, obviously he's super fast and, he can, easily break away and, you think you've got him covered, but then all of a sudden he goes for like a 60-yard touchdown. But I think he really showed that, especially in the game against the Bucs in the Super Bowl, that like, as long as you keep one of those safeties back to guard him, then he's pretty ineffective. He doesn't have the room to get around the people like he usually does. He can't use his speed as much. And, because that's the big, teams still make this mistake somehow, but like, these teams that decide to put him in like one-on-one coverage with someone, like he's obviously going to outrun them. But, as long as you can do what the Bucs did and, have a safety over the top to help with Tyreek Hill, then you pretty much contain him. Whereas with Kelce, he's so much more dynamic. I mean, obviously his size, him and Gronk are kind of like, they were the two tight ends that like, I guess Gronk kind of started it, but Kelce is kind of like the next generation tight end to carry it over. He's a little bit fast. Like he's not quite as big as Gronk is, but he's a little bit faster. He's a little bit more maneuverable. His size is just a mismatch. I mean, unless you can have a really good linebacker or you want to bring up one of your safeties to cover him, because the DB is not going to be able to cover him. You're going to have a really good fast linebacker, or you're going to have to bring up one of your safeties to cover him because he's going to get open otherwise. And, he can just use his strength and his size to get over it. And like I said, we saw that in the Super Bowl too, with even when Mahomes was running for his life and Tyreek Hill wasn't able to get open, he still managed to find Kelce, I think, like 8 or 9 times in that game. So, and Kelce obviously is a huge red zone target, whereas I think Tyreek Hill becomes highly ineffective in the red zone. At that point, you kind of can put man-to-man coverage with him because, he's not going to run past you or anything for a long gain because there's only 5 yards to go or whatever. So I just think Kelce can be used in way more situations than Tyreek Hill.
All right, yeah, I think you summed that up nicely, and we all agree with you. And so far, guys, Connor and I agree 4 out of 4 times. So that's, who would have thought that? We'll see if that changes on the next one.
Don't worry, I know at least one coming up where I'm pretty sure we're going to disagree. So.
Oh wow, okay. So the next one we have two of the top receivers this past year. That would be Davante Adams and Stephon Diggs. So I'm going to go Team Adams.
First of all, let me just say in our family league at one point, I did have both of these guys on my team. Team Adams.
Thank you for trading Stephon Diggs to me. So I'm going to go Team Diggs.
First disagree.
And I'm going to go Team Adams.
Okay, so we have 3 Adams, 1 Diggs. I guess we'll let Eric talk about why he picked Adams.
Yeah, both of these guys obviously had fantastic seasons, but in my opinion, Davante Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I feel like he tends to get overlooked by a lot of people. Like a lot of people say like Julio Jones is better, or a lot of people say DeAndre Hopkins is better, and obviously like I like both of those guys as well, and I'm very impressed by them. But Davante Adams to me is just on a whole nother level. It seems to me like no matter what teams try to do to stop this guy, he still finds a way to get open. And even in Green Bay, when most people couldn't even name a lot of their other wide receivers that they have, like most people haven't even heard of them, like he still finds a way to get it done, even though like he knows going into the game, like I'm probably going to get double teamed a lot of the time. The teams are going to be game planning to stop me. He still puts up amazing numbers. He still is reliable. I've just been very impressed with him. Whereas Diggs has been good his whole career, and obviously he had a fantastic season this past season, but I haven't seen Diggs do it enough for me to put him over Adams, whereas Adams over the several of these last seasons has just year in and year out brought it. So I've got Adams.
All right, yeah, I definitely agree with what you said there, Eric. But Connor, why did you pick Diggs instead?
So, thing for me was, I feel like these two are very, I mean, it's a good comparison here. They're very like mirror images of each other, whereas, they both have a really good quarterback, but they're on a team where they're pretty much the only big receiving threat. I mean, the Bills have Cole Beasley too, but he's more of just kind of like that slot receiver. And, obviously the Packers have like their deep threat with Allen Lazard. So, they both have other receivers to go to, but I feel like you said, these guys, they know they're going to get doubled. They know that they're going to, do whatever. And it was funny because Eric said that he mentioned that, he hasn't seen Stephon Diggs do it enough. I feel like I haven't seen Davante Adams do it enough, especially with the fact that, he's obviously got a future Hall of Fame quarterback throwing to him with Aaron Rodgers. And the thing with Davante Adams, you look at his seasons and, really he's only had 2 seasons so far in his career where he's been over 1,000 yards. I mean, obviously I know, in 2019, he had a couple injury problems, but still, out of his whole career, only 2 seasons over 1,000 yards. Whereas, I don't know exactly how many Stephon Diggs has, but obviously Stephon Diggs had the advantage of having Adam Thielen next to him for a little bit of his career. But I think he really proved this season that he could step out and be that number 1 guy. So I mean, Diggs only has 3 too, but it's just like, I think with Stephon Diggs, you talk about how Davante Adams was able to get open and like, he somehow always finds the way. I feel like that's the way it was with Diggs this year. I mean, Diggs, he had like over 125 receptions. He had like 1,500 receiving yards. It seemed like no matter what these defenses tried to do to stop him this year, Josh Allen would find a way to get it to him. And, obviously Josh Allen was great this year, but Aaron Rodgers was the MVP this year. So still an inferior quarterback situation going on there. So I just think, and Diggs is also, he's a little bit younger than Davante Adams. He hasn't been around quite as long. So I just like the future for Stephon Diggs more than I like it for Davante Adams. Because I feel like the second that, Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay or Davante Adams goes somewhere else, he's not going to be as successful. Whereas Stephon Diggs, he had Kirk Cousins throwing to him at one point. He still put up numbers. So I think Stephon Diggs can do it anywhere on any team, whereas I don't see that out of Davante Adams. I think he's in a great situation in Green Bay, but it wouldn't work out otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really tough one, and I did think that they were like mirror images of each other. That's why I put them together. And then same, honestly, too, with this next set. This is going to be really hard to pick between, but our next 2 that we have here are going to be Allen Robinson and Mike Evans. So, man, I've gone back and forth on this one a lot, but right now I'm gonna stick with this. I'm gonna say Team Evans.
Team A-Rob.
Team A-Rob.
Team Robinson.
Okay, wow. So I'm on my own this time. I picked Mike Evans. Everybody else picked Allen Robinson. So I guess my thing for Evans is like he's a guaranteed 1,000 yards. Like I'm pretty sure I don't think any year he's had less than 1,000 yards. And A-Rob's been great. I know, like I will have nothing bad to say about A-Rob, but other than the fact that he has had an injury history, Mike Evans, I think, is more dependable in that department. I think over the career, he's missed a lot less games, which is nice. And they're both similar types of receivers, jump ball type of guys. You could argue maybe one does it better than the other, but for me, Mike Evans, the fact that he shows up like almost every week, he's always been the number 1 receiver his entire career. So he's always getting the number 1 matchup. And I know you'll probably talk about how the Buccaneers offense was loaded, but still to me, he was their biggest weapon. He's the end zone guy, red zone. sometimes there will be games where he gets like 2 catches for 6 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Like that's also an important factor with receivers, I think, is being able to be useful in the red zone, and he's definitely quite useful at that. And he was a big reason, I think, why the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. If it wasn't for him, I'm not sure they could have done it. So that also speaks to his value, in my opinion. But I'll let Eric talk about Allen Robinson first, since he obviously a former Jag.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've always loved watching this guy. I really wish the Jags would have kept him and tried to find a way to make the relationship work, because Allen Robinson is just unbelievably good. And I think, putting the numbers aside for a second, I mean, I think the biggest thing that makes Allen Robinson stand out to me more over Mike Evans, not necessarily him, but if you look at the quarterback play that Allen Robinson has had to deal with throughout his career, I mean, this man dealt with like Blaine Gabbert and Chad Henne on the Jags, and then now he's been dealing with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles on the Bears. I mean,
What,
this
Eric?
guy,
Those are like the best quarterbacks in the history of the league.
Actually, it was
don't you know?
It was Bortles, not Gabbert.
Oh, Bortles. That's right. Yeah,
Because that's
right,
so much
Bortles,
better.
Yeah,
I know.
upgrade. Way to
AFC Championship
disprove my
Bortles.
argument there, Zach. Come on, man. But no, I mean, I would guarantee you, like, get this guy on a team with a competent quarterback, and this guy will take you places. Like, he could take a team to the moon if he had a good quarterback. I mean, the numbers that he's put up, and I swear, like, when I watched him on the Jags, I haven't seen many of his games on the Bears, obviously, but when he was on the Jags, I mean, if a 50-50 ball came his way, like, I don't even know if I could recall a time where he didn't come down with it. I mean, some of the catches this man came down with were just unbelievably good. So Mike Evans may have like the better numbers and things like that, but if I'm starting a team, I'm taking Allen Robinson, because I'll get him somebody better than Mitch Trubisky or Blake Bortles, and this guy's going to take me places.
All right, Nate, do you want to add anything to that? Because I know you also met him in person, so you might have a personal reason for picking him.
Yeah, I mean, Eric covered most of it, but yeah, like Zach said, I've been a big fan since he was in Jacksonville, and I mean, yeah, like the best quarterback he's played with in his career is probably either Nick Foles or Blake Bortles. I would probably say Nick Foles, I guess, but I mean, that's pretty bad. So I mean, yeah, like, yeah, like Eric said, I mean, the catches he makes on a week in, week out basis are incredible, but most of the time it's because none of those guys could, put it within, like a foot of him. He has to make all these crazy catches, and I think he can still make big plays if he has a good quarterback, but it's just like, I think, if you get him the ball, like, accurately and get him open and all that, his numbers are just going to go through the roof. He's going to be, probably, he could lead the league in yards if he had a real quarterback. So, yeah, that's who I would take, and I'd like to see him land on a legit team this offseason, hopefully.
Yeah, that's always been a thing with Robinson, though, is like he's been known for chasing the bag instead of like going to a winning situation. But let's take a look here at these Twitter polls and see if Twitter agrees with us or not. So for the Tyreek Hill Travis Kelce debate, we had 16 votes only, but 63% went with Kelce, 37% went with Hill. And then for Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs, we had 79% go with Adams and only 21% with Diggs, basically mirroring what we said. And then we had Allen Robinson win 61% to 38% versus Mike Evans. So Allen Robinson did win the Twitter battle for that duo, but that was such a hard one for me to pick. And then now we'll move on to the running backs. It doesn't get any easier with this one, guys. So we'll start out with the first one. These are the best and most established on this list here, but believe they're from the same draft class too, so that makes things even more interesting. We're gonna decide between Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. I'm gonna go Team Cook.
Team Kamara.
I will say this was probably like the toughest one for me to decide, but I cannot deny my dude who won me the fantasy football championship, Team Alvin Kamara.
I gotta go Team Kamara. That was a tough one for me too.
Yeah, so this one was really tough. This is another one for me that I was like flip-flopping on, but I settled with Cook. Mainly the reason I settled with Cook is comparing the offensive lines of the Vikings and Saints, like how you guys were just using the argument about how Robinson has never had a good quarterback compared to Evans having Brady and Winston, but for me, this is similar to that in the fact that Kamara has had a great offensive line and Dalvin Cook hasn't had a great offensive line. The biggest weakness for Cook would be injuries, which is like the opposite of what I argued last time with Evans and Robinson. But still, Cook is just so dynamic in my opinion, and he's like a pure running back as well. I feel like there's guys that can do what Alvin Kamara does in the passing game. Solely, you can find those. You can find like a Tevin Coleman, Austin Eckler's around. Like, there's guys that do that sort of stuff in the passing game, but the stuff that Cook does in the running game, like up the middle, it's rare. There's only a handful that can do what he does. And for that reason is why I'm picking him. And he accounts for so much of the Vikings offense. He's really their go-to guy. And also too, during his career, he's had the downside of playing with Kirk Cousins compared to Drew Brees. So teams are definitely eyeing up Cook more than they are with Brees, having the threat of Brees when he was great in his career. But like I said, this one's a tough one, but I ended up settling with Cook. Connor, talk us through about why you went with Kamara, and obviously he won you the championship, so you can say that too, probably.
Yeah, he was. Him and Kelsey were the two biggest reasons, but definitely that last week when he had that Christmas Day game, I was like, we knew like right from the beginning. I was like, well, you can just go ahead and hand this to Connor. But I think what you were talking about with the quarterback situation, like with Kirk Cousins and Drew Brees, I think Alvin Kamara really stepped out of that shadow this year and really showed that he can, because there's always been that question with Alvin Kamara, like, okay, can he be the running back that can put the team on his back? He's, for most of his career, Mark Ingram was in New Orleans and he was, the grind it out, get the tough yards back. And now they have Latavius Murray, which they ironically got from the Minnesota Vikings, but and he's kind of now like the grind it out every down back. But Murray's not nearly as dynamic as Ingram is, or like, he's not as good as Mark Ingram was. So, they really had to rely on Kamara this year, especially with the fact that Drew Brees couldn't throw the ball further than 15 yards on a consistent basis. So Kamara he was really able to shine. And I think it really was good for him to, like I said, he stepped out of it because you knew that going into these games that, what was the number one, especially with Michael Thomas being hurt all year too, for the most part, like you knew going into these games, who is the one guy that we have to stop on the Saints? It's Alvin Kamara. And yet nobody could seem to do it. The Bucks were like the one team that managed to keep him contained all year. But even then, like, it kind of showed that they had to focus so much on Kamara that they actually let Drew Brees beat them for the most part in those two games during the regular season. Obviously, the playoff game was different, but and like I said, he's probably up there with Christian McCaffrey as like the most dynamic running back in the league in terms of that he can do everything. He can be a receiver, he can run the ball, he's got ridiculous speed. He's one of the deadliest running backs in the league on the toss play. You don't see toss plays too often anymore because, just these defensive ends and linebackers are too athletic. They get past the blocks too easily. But Alvin Kamara is one of the few running backs in the league that can still make the toss play work. And yeah, he's definitely not as good of a pure running back as Dalvin Cook, but he's definitely a weapon that you have to account for every game, no matter what situation you're in. So, and like I said, I think he stepped out of the Drew Brees shadow this year. So it'll be interesting to see how he does going forward, because obviously now it's going to be, looking like most likely Taysom Hill is going to be taking over at quarterback, but it'll be interesting to see if he can keep up the success sans Drew Brees.
Yeah. We'll see. That this one was so tough to pick from, but
Yeah.
we'll move on to the we'll move on to the next one. And this is going to be Aaron Jones versus Nick Chubb. So I'm going to go Team Chubb.
Team Chubb.
Team Chubb. Well, Nate.
Nate.
Oh, he's muted.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Team Chubb though.
Okay, so I'll stick with Nate. Why? Because I know we have Packers fans listen to us, but why do you prefer Chubb over Jones?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I don't know. I just think he's, in terms of being an all-around back, I like Chubb. Both these guys, obviously, this is a tough one. They're both obviously great. Both put up great numbers week in, week out, but I just think Chubb's more of an all-around back to me, and it's just he's been playing in Cleveland, which until this year really wasn't, a great situation. Jones has been great, but he's been with a guy like Aaron Rodgers who, defenses can't stack the box. You got Rodgers, you got Devontae Adams, you got all those guys out wide, and it's like, I think things are a little bit easier for a running back in that situation than, like I said, until last year when things really started clicking for the Browns. But I don't know, I think Chubb just for me is showing off more of that top end ability, and even splitting carries with last year. I think he still put up big numbers and made a bunch of big plays. So I think talent wise, I would take Chubb over Jones, although they're both I think pretty kind of similar style of backs. I would take Chubb though.
Yeah, I should have done a trigger warning at the start, guys. Like, this isn't hate towards the people we don't pick. Like, Aaron Jones is great. It's just we all think Chubb's a little bit better.
Well, I was like, because that people are going to complain. They're going to be like, "Oh, they're continuing that Packers hate." Like,
I know. Well,
like, screw
hey,
Aaron Jones.
Three of us picked Tay Adams, so I picked Tay Adams too. So you can't say anything about that. But yeah, Chubb to me is so dynamic, and he reminds you of like a smash mouth, like physical running back from like a decade ago. Like, and honestly, like if the Browns, he's like one of the only running backs that like if they ran it on 3rd and 10, like I could realistically see them getting that. Like that's how good of a runner he is, and I watched that a lot of the times with Cleveland. They did so much better with him than without him. He's huge to their offense. Like I think he's almost Derrick Henry-esque he's like the Derrick Henry for Cleveland, in my opinion. But we'll move on now, and we started the show with a pair of rookies. We will end the show with a pair of rookies. So 2 of the best rookie running backs from last season, also playing the same division to add to that rivalry. We've got James Robinson and Jonathan Taylor. So I'm going to go Team Robinson.
Duh, Team Robinson.
Shocker there. This was another really tough one for me, but I'm going to go Team Robinson.
Yeah, I've got to go Team Robinson too.
Okay. So we all picked Robinson, might be a little biased here, but
see, I'm not.
Okay, yeah. So then let's have Connor start then as the unbiased, and then we'll transition to the bias.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely just think I just base this, obviously we've only got one season to evaluate these guys so far, but I just really base it off of, definitely comparing the situations that both of these running backs are in. I mean, the Colts have a way better offensive line, with Quentin Nelson especially being the key point of that offensive line, and just the whole unit is really good. And obviously Phillip Rivers was still able to put together a decent season, so teams still had to account for the passing game when they were playing the Colts, but literally James Robinson was the whole Jaguars offense this year. Like, Gardner Minshew didn't play very well, and then when he was hurt, like when Jake Luton was coming in and playing, like he couldn't do anything, and Mike Glennon was even worse. Like the Jaguars literally had nothing going for them on offense in any fashion except for James Robinson. So the fact that he was able to put up the numbers that he did just was astounding to me. It showed, it was almost Barry Sanders-esque in a way that, like, okay, I said this with Kamara, but even more so with the Jaguars. Like, okay, who do we have to stop? We have to stop James Robinson. Like, he's their whole offense. Like, they have nothing else except James Robinson, and yet teams still didn't manage to stop him. I mean, he was even in the conversation for Rookie of the Year at one point. It's crazy that, an undrafted rookie running back of all things was in the conversation for Rookie of the Year for a while. So, a 1,000-yard season in his rookie year on a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, applause to you. Hats off to you, James Robinson. I think it's really good for the Jaguars. They have that piece. They're in full rebuild mode right now. Hopefully for them, they're going to get their quarterback this year. So, but they've already got the running back down, so no need to worry there.
Yeah, so having watched all 16 of those terrible Jaguar games, I'll say this,
except for the first one.
The first one, yeah. A majority of the games they were behind in, probably actually all of them, they were behind in the fourth quarter. And for whatever reason, Jay Gruden just decided to throw the ball, even in the kind of close games sometimes, the Texans game, I remember, was close. The
Vikings game.
Yeah, the Vikings. They just went away from the run, and it was so frustrating to watch. It was why are you going away from the run when that's the best thing you have going for you? And they're not stopping it. That was the thing. He would average 5 yards a carry in the first half, and then get 4 carries the second half. That's the thing. If he was, like you say, if he was on a better team and he could have run the ball more, I don't know how many carries he got, but in the second half, he had almost nothing. It was just a joke to watch, but he could have done so much better if they had leads and if they were running the ball in the second half as well. And in the passing game, he was actually surprisingly decent as well. And another thing too, I don't know what Taylor's touchdowns were, and Eric will definitely agree with me on this, but I've never in my life seen someone get so many touchdowns called back for penalties than James Robinson.
Yes.
I had him on my fantasy team too, so that made things worse, but he would get a 30-yard touchdown called back for holding, or a 30-yard touchdown called back for illegal motion or something, or it's just some random. There'd be sometimes it would be something not even to do with his touchdown. And sometimes they were questionable.
Or a false start, but they let him run all the way anyway. They didn't blow it dead.
Well, no, I didn't see that, but it was just just so many times it got called back for penalties, and if even half of those had counted as touchdowns, he would have had a much more impressive touchdown stat. Eric knows that, but Eric, do you want to add anything else to the Robinson soapbox here?
I was hoping maybe I would forget something, but I think y'all covered it pretty well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to forget the touchdowns he got taken away from him. My God, that was so many this year.
Well, I guess just about the penalties, though, is sometimes the flag would come, you would think oh yeah, touchdown, touchdown, let's go. And then oh, here comes a flag. Oh, there was a what? Sometimes the flags would come in so late, after the play was over. It was almost is something going on here? It's a little skeptical.
One of these refs has money on the other team or something. My
buddy has James Robinson on his fantasy team. Flag.
The Jaguars are getting too close in this game. We can't have them winning.
I know, but also that wouldn't make sense though, because they wanted the Jets to get Trevor Lawrence. So they would. I honestly, they would have been let's make sure the Jets get Trevor Lawrence. But I'm not going to promote those types of conspiracy theories here on the show. Let's look at.
Trust me, I've already seen too much on Facebook about people saying the NFL is rigged because Tom Brady won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we know. So let's take a look at the Twitter polls here and see what the results were. 67% took Kamara, 33% took Cook. We had 80% take Chubb, 20% take Aaron Jones. Both of these respectively got 12 and 15 votes each. And then for this last one, James Robinson or Jonathan Taylor. Taylor won the vote, 63%. I forgot none of us made devil's advocates for Jones or Taylor, but that's all right. We already talked about that enough, so
I probably couldn't have done it for either of them anyway. So
yeah, that's fine. We'll wrap the show up with Around the Hoop, and for this episode, we have a star potentially on the move. So I'll let Eric start us off on the discussion about Andre Drummond.
Yeah, so in case if you haven't heard, the Cleveland Cavaliers are looking to trade Andre Drummond. You can look at his stats here. He's basically, this is what he's done throughout his whole career. I mean, he averages a double-double with points and rebounds, and then defensively you might get a block or steal a game or something like that. So, like, Andre Drummond's a pretty good player. He's not my favorite player or anything, but I guess the best thing to say about him is that he's like he's obviously a reliable rebounder. He's definitely one of the best rebounders in the NBA. And then he's not a dynamic scorer or anything. He's not going to like create offense for you, but he'll get you some easy buckets on a pick and roll, like drive to the basket, or get an offensive rebound and get a putback. Like that. That's where he brings the most value to the table. So I could definitely see some teams that would be interested in trading for him. I think the biggest thing that's holding up the Cavs right now, though, is he does have a pretty expensive salary. I don't remember exactly what his number is, but I want to say it's like 28 million or 25 million.
I think it's 28.
Yeah, I knew it was like mid to high 20s. So I do think I think he is a little overpaid since he's not a dynamic of enough scorer. But at the same time, like I said, like finding a good big in today's NBA that can get you guaranteed rebounds and things like that can be a little bit difficult to come by. So we came up with a list of 5 teams that we think are the best fits and also seem to be the teams that are the most interested in trading for him. So we're going to kind of break down each team and why we think that it's a good fit for that team. And so we have the Toronto Raptors, we have the Charlotte Hornets, Connor's team. Woo! the New York Knicks, Nick Rue's team, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Brooklyn Nets. So I'm going to start with the Toronto Raptors here, and the Raptors probably overall do make the most sense. They are also the team that seems to be drawing the most interest. The Raptors could really use a good big man ever since Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka left. That's definitely a big hole for them. They still have Van Vliet and Lowry, so they're doing okay at the guards. They've got Siakam, although he hasn't been quite as good this year. But the Raptors are turning it around as well. They kind of struggled early on in the season. They're starting to play a little bit better. So getting a good big would be very beneficial for them. The only reason why I could see a trade not happening for the Raptors would be because the Raptors do have a problem with the salary cap, as do many teams that are interested in trading for him. So the only way I think a trade is going to work with the Raptors is if they can get a third team involved to dump a bad contract off on or something so that they can make the room for him. But if they can make room and get Andre Drummond, I think the Raptors could be a little bit more of a team to, look out for, heading towards the rest of the season. So that's the description of Andre Drummond, what he brings to the table. And then that is also the case for why he could go to the Raptors. And then obviously, since Connor's team is the Hornets, Connor will present his case for the Hornets acquiring Andre Drummond.
Yeah, so, I mean, definitely the biggest thing that the Hornets need right now is a big-time center. Gordon Hayward's been playing good. Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball have been playing good at the guards. Miles Bridges has done pretty good coming off the bench. But it's really been the 4 and the 5 that have not been good for the Hornets this year. PJ Washington is kind of struggling this year, and I think it's really because there's that lack of a good, really big physical center in the middle. Cody Zeller and Bismack Babumbo are not going to scare anybody. So,
what?
Yeah, what? They're like the best players in the NBA. What?
Best big man duo ever.
But yeah, so it's really just going to be about getting that big man in the middle, because I think that will really help PJ Washington. They both have very similar styles of play. They both like to crash the board. They both like to go after rebounds. It's just, I think they're a good fit together, whereas I don't think PJ Washington meshes well with either Zeller or Bismack Babumbo. But basically, from what I'm hearing when it comes to trade rumors between the Hornets and the Cavaliers, obviously the Hornets, just like everyone else, they have to worry about cap problems when it comes to trading for Drummond, because he's making it's basically like a $28 million contract. So it's just a lot of money that has to go out to get to him. So basically, from what I'm seeing, the rumors would be that the Hornets would trade both Zeller and Babumbo, and they would also throw in Malik Monk in the trade. So that way they have enough money going out, basically because all three of those players are on expiring deals, especially Zeller. He's making $15.4 million on his deal this year, which, I know the Hornets would love to get rid of that, because Zeller is really not worth that at all. I don't know why he got paid that much in the first place, but especially when he's still basically
Michael Jordan.
He's basically still on his rookie on a first round pick deal, in a way, not completely, but it's just he never really showed anything, even though he was a first round pick. It's just okay, he didn't really show anything, but let's give him all this money, like the Hornets like to do. They gave Gordon Hayward a $120 million contract. So, so basically, it gets rid of Zeller's deal. Malik Monk, that would clear another $5 million or so, and then Babumbo's he's basically making a minimum salary right now, so it's a little over $2 million that he's making. So, basically, it would get rid of all three of those contracts. No re-signing to have to be done there. And it would really bring in a really strong, solid piece for the team. I know losing Malik Monk probably would be the biggest hurt from this trade, because I don't think losing Zeller, but if you get Andre Drummond, losing Zeller and Babumbo is not going to be a big deal at all. And they've already got Vernon Carey as the second center on the team when they drafted him, so they don't need depth. Depth isn't going to be an issue either. It's really, I think, losing Malik Monk would be the biggest hindrance, because he's been a good scorer off the bench. He's not a starter or anything, but he's been a fire off the bench. He's a good 3-point shooter. But I definitely think, the benefits would outweigh the cost in that, because he's for a player that comes off the bench, only making $5 million a year, it'd be good to get rid of that. Especially since he's probably going to command more money in the future, just because that's what players like to do. But getting a player like Drummond would be big. So make it happen, Charlotte. The Hornets are already doing good, so this could push us over the top.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about why the Knicks and Mavs should make this trade, and I'll start with the Knicks first, which you might think is a little bit surprising, but when you think about it a little bit deeper, it actually makes a lot of sense, I think, for the Knicks, because first off, how would Drummond fit on the team? I think he'd fit great, because Mitchell Robinson is off to not a great start to the season. He was basically the hope for Knicks fans, was hoping that Mitchell Robinson would be this great center for him, but that's not turning out to be the case this year. And then the second big reason I think they should do the trade is the fact that they're actually good this year. They're over exceeding, kind of like the Hornets are. So the reason he's going to be leaving the Cavs is they're sucking now. They're 10-19, I think, is a record. So they're not going to make the playoffs.
They've lost 9 of their last 10.
Yeah, they're just falling apart. So that's the thing. The Cavs aren't making a playoff push. The Knicks are the 7 seed right now. So they're, along with the Hornets, they're trying to make a playoff push for the first time in a long time. So they could really use him on their team. And then finally, I'm not sure what the trade would entail. I didn't do enough research on that. But as far as cap space goes, I gotta assume the Knicks are one of the better cap situation teams out there, so they have the most flexibility, I would say. out of all these teams. And another thing good about this trade for them is Drummond's on an expiring deal. So it's not like they're going to tie themselves up for next free agency, whoever's available. Like I'm not sure if free agents will go to the Knicks, but at least they'll have the money to offer the next batch of free agents. And it's not like they're going to have $28 million for Drummond every single season. But he could do great for them in the short term, and I don't think it would take a lot to take him off the Cavs because they just really want to get rid of him. And then for the Mavericks' sake, this is a little bit different from the Knicks' point of view because the Mavericks aren't off to a great season. They're doing a lot worse than people thought they'd be. They're currently not in the playoffs, so they're probably in the mindset of we were expected to make the playoffs. We need to make the playoffs. Let's do whatever we can to make the playoffs. So they're going to be buyers on the trade deadline, and I think Drummond makes a lot of sense for them because, he's not, I wouldn't say he's cheap with his contract, but he's cheap in terms of what it would take to get him. I've seen trade offers of like backup. I can't remember them, but it's just kind of like with the Hornets, like some backup players and stuff for Drummond, and I think that'd be good for them because also too they need a big, Porzingis is that offensive like unicorn that shoots threes and plays out of position a lot, but Drummond is like that traditional center that gets the rebounds and plays defense and does the dirty work and stuff. And I think that's something that the Mavericks really can use is somebody like him on their team. And I think that would be it would definitely put them in a lot better chance to make the playoffs as if they didn't make the trade. So I think they're serious contenders in this as well. And then we have a fifth team here, the Brooklyn Nets. I'll let Connor explain why the Nets should really be interested in the trade.
Yeah, so really this is a little bit of a different dynamic than these other four teams that we've been talking about. These other four teams that we've been talking about are going to be looking for straight up trades, trade a couple guys to the Cavaliers and, work things out. But the thing for the Nets is that, obviously he would be a really good fit. I guess I'll start with that because when they made the trade for James Harden, they sent away Jarrett Allen, who was, a really good center. He was a really big focal point of their team. But, when they saw an opportunity to get James Harden and they took it. So, there's a big hole there right now that didn't used to be there at center for the Brooklyn Nets. So, excuse me, especially since we were talking about just a couple episodes that the Nets really need like a big time defender, which they did sign Andre Roberson, but signing Andre Drummond would be a huge upgrade to their defense. Because like you said, he's that traditional center. He does the dirty work. He doesn't. He's not like a Karl Anthony Towns sort of center where he just kind of hangs out on the perimeter and jacks up threes. Like, he's not going to do that. He'll stay in the paint. He'll get the rebounds. He'll do the dirty work. So, but the problem for the Nets, just like the problem for a lot of teams, is the money issue. Now, basically, the only way that the Nets could get him is the Cavaliers would have to buy out his contract. Now, or was it? It's like the Cavaliers can buy him out or the Nets can buy him out. I don't know. I think it's the Cavaliers basically can buy out his contract. So, and then they can more easily trade him because that's the problem. The money problem is an issue for everyone. So they're saying that this is actually something that could happen and could be likely to happen because they might not find any trade partners given his contract, even though a lot of teams are showing interest like the Raptors, the Hornets, the Knicks, the Mavericks, the Heat have been mentioned as a team interested. There's a couple other teams that have been mentioned too. But with the Nets, like they would really need this buyout to happen. And since, if they're saying that this could be very likely, especially if Drummond stays on the Cavaliers past the trade deadline, like if they aren't able to dump him at the trade deadline, then they're probably going to buy out his contract because they just, like Eric said, or like Zach said, they want to do everything they can to get rid of him. So that would be big for them. And obviously the Nets would be, if that happens for the Nets, then the Nets are going to go after him because, I talked about with the Hornets, like if he gets on the Hornets and the Hornets are, could make the playoffs. But if he goes to the Brooklyn Nets, like good luck Eastern Conference. Like there's not going to be a lot that the rest of the East is going to be able to do against a team of James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Andre Drummond. Like this is going to be the next super team basically. And obviously it's just going to be for a season because Drummond's on an expiring deal, but this would be like one of the ultimate championship or bust kind of teams if they were able to pull in Andre Drummond this season. So definitely would be something that the Nets would want to work out, but obviously there has to be a buyout that has to happen for it to work. So
yeah, well, it's really going to be interesting to see where he goes. I thought honestly, like, we talked about this as an idea, and I was thinking he might be traded by then. We might be talking about, his new team and whatnot. We might do that next week. We'll see. But I just know it's a bad situation there. Like, the Cavs need to get rid of him. Like, they're playing Jarrett Allen instead. It'd be so funny if he went to the Nets for the fact that Jarrett Allen went from the Nets to the Cavs, and then Drummond goes to the Nets. Like, wow. But we'll see what happens. I still think he's going to be really good. At first, I was like, Andre Drummond, like, he's like when you think of him in NBA terms, like comparing to like a food, it's like broccoli. Like, it's something you got to have, but like, it's not real flary or sexy.
I don't know if it's something that you gotta have. But
you need your veggies, Connor.
Yeah. Just okay.
Hey, listen to me. I mean, broccoli is like one of my favorite foods, but like for most people, I'm not sure it's something that you have to have.
No, you don't have to. But like, definitely good for you.
I would equate him to water more so. Like something that you have to have, but it's obviously not like, like I'm drinking soda or something, like this flashy, cool drink. Like, no, I'm just drinking water, but like you need it to live.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, but
Who's hungry, guys?
But yeah, I mean, but when you really look at it, like he's only 27 too. That was another thing that kind of surprised me. Like, he's in the prime of his career. So we'll see what happens. I think if he goes to a contending team somehow, like, that will be a big story. If he goes to one of these middling teams, like, that'll also be a story because they'll be greatly benefited. But we'll see what happens. And Eric, I know, will want this to get done as soon as possible.
Yeah, I have Andre Drummond on my fantasy team. So if he could, get put on a team so he can start playing again, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a guy out because they're injured, you're like, okay, they can't play, like they're hurt, I get it. But when it's like, well, we're benching him because, we want to trade him, so he's not going to play until we trade him. Like, oh, great. So like,
yeah,
he's still getting paid his $28 million, but he's not playing. Like,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's going to wrap this up, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed listening, and we'll be back next week. Like I said, follow us on Twitter because next week's episode, we will be tweeting out questions for you, the audience, to answer to, and we will discuss those results and those topics. So stay tuned for that this week. Those will be coming out. The links will be in the description, or you could go to twitter.com/clutchcrewsport, just a singular noun at the end, sport. So yeah, follow us there and get up to date with all the Clutch Crew Sports content. And until then, guys, sorry, I don't know why I started thinking of saying Eric's saying, but be clutch.
I was like, whoa, that like froze right there.
I almost said Eric's saying, but be clutch, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.